Hello everyone, welcome to my class. In our today's class, we'll talk about IELTS line graph. In the IELTS line graph, that is actually the task of writing task 1. So let's get started. Here you can see one line graph which is showing that the consumption of spreads. What types of spreads? The spreads is about margarine, low fat and butter. There are three colors here the graph used. One is a green, another one you can see blue, and the red color. In the red color, it represents the low fat reduced spreads, and the blue color represents margarine. That is also one kind of butter. Second is the butter, the normal butter that we use in our bread and other things. So let's read the graph or the line first. What's before writing well in writing task 1, we need to read the line graph very well first. Among all the bar chart, pie chart, line graph and the other maps, line graph is the most difficult for our students because they do not have the idea of how to write line graphs. So in our today's episode, we discuss how this line graph you can write well. Before writing the line graph well, we need to know that how to read line graph first, how to read this data. So in this data, you can see there are two lines. If this is an x-axis, and that is definitely an y-axis. In the y-axis, it explains about grams, that is the unit. So here the margarine, low fat and the butter, that describes with the unit of grams, not with the kg and other things. Second, in the lower part, you can see it's about a year. The year starts 1981 to 2007. So in this line graph, this actually tells us about from 1981 to 2007, what was the consumption or the selling spreads of margarine, low fat and butter. What was the condition from the butter when it starts in 1981 and 2007. After that, what conditions it happens in 1991, 1996 and 2001. So let's get more deeper into the slides. First, we will discuss butter. Let's see what is the conditions of the butter in when it started 1981. So we will start first start with the butter. Butter, you see, in 1981, the selling spreads was 140. Then after 5 years, it rises to 160. But in 10 years, since started from the graph, it's downfall. It means decreases. It's absolutely decreases. So within just a 10 year, the line graph tells that it's a decrease. So 10 years, butter position is decreased, but the initially first 5 years it was really high. It was rise. Then it's gradually falling down, and finally in 2007 it's absolutely lower than their current graph. So we understand about the butter condition that it was initially 36 years ago, the butter was very highest levels of selling consumptions, but later it becomes absolutely downfall. Now let's start with the margarine. Margarine sellings, you see, in 1981 was not that much high. Butter was the highest. After that, margarine steadily continues, and in 10 years, it's similar to butter and the margarine. Its sell was same. Here is you can see the clash. The butter and the margarine was the same. You see, that's the beauty, very, very beauty, very beauty. Then the margarine continuously, steadily continue the consumptions better than the butter, but suddenly in 1996 it started to decrease as well. Not dramatically, steadily it started decreasing. And suddenly margarine also get a downfall after 10 years. So the butter and the margarine both started decreasing their consumptions in 2007. On the other hand, the low fat and reduced spreads was not much common to the people. It was started in 1996, which is 15 years later from the butter and the margarine. People started, after coming it to the market, it immediately rise, and in next 5 years it reaches the same like the margarine. However, it's also reduced its consumption in 2007. That's about the graph. So let's see how in this graph we can write a good. So far you understand about the line graph, how we need to consume, and now we will move to see the good write-up which can give a very good writing in IELTS. So let's see a good demo that will help us to know what is a good write-up. Now, coming back, the line graph illustrates the amount of three kinds of spreads as we mentioned: margarine, butter, and low-fat and reduced spreads, which were consumed from 1981 to 2007. Units are measured in grams. Very nicely written. Very nicely written. Second, in the body paragraph, it's written overall the consumptions of margarine and the butter decreased over the period given, while for low-fat and reduced spreads it rose. Rose means not the flour. Rose actually the past form of rise. Rise, past form of rise. Moving toward, margarine was the most widely consumed in the middle of the period, but by the end, low-fat and reduced spreads was most popular. In the body paragraph 2, we see now, with regards to the amount of butter used, it began at around 140 grams, then peaked at 160 grams in 1986 before falling dramatically. This word is a very good word. When you see the graph, let's go to the graph first. We can understand what is actually the dramatical fall. You see, this one has a certain cell. This one, butter, is a very good consumption in 1981. It decreases, but dramatically both butter and the margarine, same cell in 1991. This types of cell is called dramatically. And you see here the new product, margarine and the low fat comes, and the dramatically it has a similar consumptions with the other products. The writer here used the same thing very nicely, the word dramatically very nicely. 50 grams around. Likewise, approximately 90 grams of margarine was eaten in the first year, after which the figure fluctuated slightly and dropped to a low of 40 grams in 2007. On the other hand, the consumptions, this is the final paragraph. This is the final paragraph. On the other hand, the consumptions of low fats and reduced spreads only started in 1996, about the 10 grams. This figure, which reached a high of just over 80 grams 5 years later, fell slightly in the final years of approximately 70 grams in 2007. This is all about a good writing demo to get an IELTS score. Now, moving on to my next part, we have seen already a very good writing that can give you good marks in IELTS writing test 1. But what is the main problems when our students writes? Our students writes, they have a basic grammar problem. They do not know what is the what is actually the tense, subject verb agreement, preposition, connector, even the parts of speech. Then how do they expect a good writing, even they know how to read the graph well? Because they have very serious problems in their grammar. After that, the sentence making. People most of the time, or the students most of the time, use the simple sentences or the active sentences. They do not know how to use complex sentences and the compound sentences. Here the write-up that I have shown to you is all about a complex sentence writing. It's a linking words writing, good vocabulary used by the writer. So this is the another problem, the transformations of sentence or the simple sentence, complex sentence or the compound sentences. Students do not have much command. Third is limited vocabulary or the lexical resources are very poor by the students. And finally, lack of exposure in speaking and listening. These things is about, in our previous curriculum or the earlier when students class 1 to 12, here absolutely speaking and listening are missing. Reading and writing are present because they are much aware with the reading and writing. However, the overall band score do not come because the lack of exposure of the speaking and listening. That's also a factor. Maybe you are very good in writing, but however, you have a lack of listening and speaking. That will also affect your overall grades in 7. So that's how about our today's class. I hope you enjoy my class.